All right, we are now recording. So I'm Marie. I'm a coordinator for Sunrise Somerville Youth, and we're having a short conversation with Willie Burnley Jr., who's running for councilor-at-large in our 2021 municipal elections. We're going to ask a few questions that are fundamental to Sunrise's mission, climate justice. For each question, there will be 2 minutes, except for the intro, which will be 4 minutes, and we will warn you visually and in the chat at 30 seconds remaining. If you're speaking when the time is up, the host will mute you. The questions will be in the categories energy, infrastructure, racial justice, and education. We'd appreciate it if you didn't share the questions to keep things fair for all candidates.
Oh, we lost him. Oh, okay. So if you're ready to go, my name is Emily. I'm also a coordinator. I'm going to be asking questions and then putting them in the chat. So the first thing is an intro. So there are 4 minutes. You please share your pronouns, your past leadership experience, what you've done to address climate change issues in the past, and why you are running for councilor-at-large.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Willie Burnley Jr. I'm a candidate for Somerville City Councilor at Large. I use he, him pronouns. And I'm really glad to be here because through so many of my experiences, I've seen the power of young people to transform the world. At some points in my life, I've been that young person, and at other points, I've been a mentor or someone who's helped guide someone on the path to making transformational change. So to speak a little bit about my past experiences and a little bit about me in general, I'm a renter who lives in Somerville. I live on Winter Hill near Magoon Square. I grew up in Southern California where I lived in a working class section of San Diego where there was many undocumented folks, working class folks who were on the front lines of wildfires and some of the extremes of climate chaos. And those experiences really shaped my politics in a lot of ways around climate change. There was one night where someone banged on my door in the middle of the night, past midnight, to tell me that we had to evacuate because a fire was coming. And this led me to wanting to get involved. So when I was in high school, I was the president of our eco club. We did cleanups and we talked about recycling and climate change and things like that. And when I came to the Boston area to go to Emerson College, I started to get involved with mass movements, the Black Lives Matter movement especially. And it taught me the importance and the power of joining with thousands of people and putting pressure on institutions directly in order to have the material needs of our communities met. And so I went from someone who cared about a lot of these issues, wrote about them for work at times. When I moved to Somerville, I was a freelance journalist. I wrote a lot about climate change and about social justice issues. But I also was getting involved, and I was joining community members to put pressure on sometimes state government, sometimes federal government. This shirt that I'm wearing is a Sunrise shirt. And almost 3 years ago, in December of 2018, a month after I got off Senator Warren's reelection campaign as a field organizer, I joined thousands and thousands of Sunrisers from around the country in DC to do a sit-in in congressional offices. And we were there, one, to lobby our members of Congress. I lobbied Jim McGovern, who actually said he was in support of a select committee on the Green New Deal to actually build the components into legislation. And we were there to put pressure on those folks who weren't so amenable to the idea. And when we went to a Kentucky congressman's office, we were arrested. And I was one of the first to be hauled out of congressional offices on that day. I say this not as a woo-woo, yay, look at me, but to say I am an organizer first. I have been putting my body on the line around these issues for a long time. And I believe that it's going to take organizers and mass movements to enact the changes that we want to see, especially in Somerville on a local level. So I know I'm short on time, but that's why I'm here, and I really hope to get your endorsement today.
All right. Thank you for sharing so much about yourself. Appreciate it. So we're going to move to our first category, which is energy. So 2 minutes for this question. How do you plan to transition Somerville to an all-electric 100% renewable energy grid? And by what year do you believe that has to be done?
Well, the energy grid, it's an important question. And my big focus is on making sure that we're carbon neutral by 2030. Current plans in Somerville focus on 2050 often. Sometimes they focus on 2040 or 2045. When I first moved to Somerville, I lived in a house that was run on oil, which is something I didn't really realize existed still, and was very expensive for us whenever we needed heat in the winter, as everyone in this area does. I'm very focused on trying to tackle these issues, and the biggest contributor of emissions in our city are our homes. And we need to be doing retrofitting work on these houses to make sure we're not having houses run on oil, not having houses run on so-called natural gas, which is methane, which is the majority of our homes right now. And I think we need to pass this some real Green New Deal to do that, to put in the work to actually invest in a climate core that can actually work on these houses. And we should also try to see if we can create a municipally owned energy grid, so that we're not only making renewable energies the source of the energy in our community, but also so that we're not empowering the same huge multi-billion-dollar companies that got us into this problem in the first place. We need to move into a place where energy is owned by the people, run by the people, and is working for the people's benefit, including their health, rather than for multinational companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So our next category is infrastructure. The first question: many decisions about public transportation are made at the state level. So how do you believe Somerville should be engaging with public transit?
It's absolutely true. Unfortunately, as with many issues in Somerville, the state is either in the way or literally has ownership of some of our roads, and it stops us from implementing common sense, life-saving technologies or changes. But there are things we can do at the local level, and this is another area where I think why we need to have activist leadership in mass movements involved. Because it's one thing for someone to say, yeah, it's the state's job. Well, I can't really do anything. I'm city council. It's another to say, we need to organize our people. We need to go to MassDOT, which is not very far from Somerville, and we need to let them know how their changes are negatively affecting the lives of our residents, and not only MassDOT, but MBTA as well. To answer your question directly, I believe in fair, free public transit. I think we should be moving to a situation where Somerville residents do not have to pay at the point of service for the T, which will encourage more people to use the T, and therefore allow people to cut back on driving and other more carbon inefficient modes of transit. I think that we should be repairing our roads and making them more safe, and creating a comprehensively connected system of protected bike lanes, which again, if people feel safe using transportation that is not cars, essentially, it will be incentivized for them. And I think there are many other ways that we can actually structurally change our community to incentivize a carless future for most people. And I'm looking forward to helping us get onto that path.
Yeah, thank you. So the next question, you already addressed this, but just so we have yes or no, and you're welcome to elaborate as well. Do you intend to make the T free for Somerville residents?
Yes, I want to do as much as we can. We have some to elaborate on it. It's not cheap. Just even as someone who uses the tea regularly, just paying month to month is not inexpensive for the average person, and therefore it's not inexpensive for tens of thousands of people. However, we have federal funds coming in next year that are going to be massive, that may allow us to pilot a program like this. We may be able to transition by starting with buses and then going from buses to buses and the T proper. But my goal is to make us have fare free transit, because it is unconscionable that we have a system right now where people who are working people spend so much of their money and time just trying to get to work that in some cases people actually lose money overall.
Yeah, so our next category is racial justice and social issues. So our first question, for 2 minutes, how do you view the future of policing in Somerville, and how have you engaged with the issue previously?
Let me just read that to make sure I heard you right. Future of policing. Yep. So this is an area where I have a lot of strong feelings, and where I know some other candidates for city council disagree with me, who are maybe more moderate than I am. I'm an abolitionist. As I said earlier, I was radicalized partially by the Black Lives Matter movement. And I don't just believe in saying Black Lives Matter, and I don't just believe in, going to a protest. I believe in actually implementing the demands of that movement, the movement for Black Lives, which has a very comprehensive list of demands that they put out years ago that unfortunately not many municipalities have actually moved on. And last year, in the wake of George Floyd's murder and Breonna Taylor's murder and Ahmaud Arbery's murder, I was personally devastated. I was in the midst of the Markey campaign, and there was a point where I could hardly work, where I could hardly interact with my colleagues, because I was so severely heartbroken by the chronic devastation of Black people in this country. By white supremacist institutions, and sometimes directly by white supremacists. And I took that pain and I organized with my neighbors, and we created Defund SPD, Defund Somerville Police Department. And we got thousands of people to sign petitions. We got 147 people specifically to give testimony to Somerville Council. And we moved over $1 million from the police into life-saving services like healthcare, housing, jobs, 2 bilingual youth specialists. And I believe that we can move further in this community to actually have a system of health where we're not using the threat of violence and incarceration to solve all our problems.
All right, yeah, thank you for that answer. And our next question is in the same topic. So how will you integrate new immigrants, particularly undocumented families, into the community, and especially into Somerville public schools?
Absolutely. And this is something, again, that is really important to me, because it's connected directly to my lived experiences. As I said, I grew up in Southern California and San Diego, and a lot of my friends growing up were either undocumented or their families were undocumented, which unfortunately I didn't know until I was in high school. Some people I'd grown up with and known for many years would tell me things like, my mom can't drive us to the mall because she's scared to drive in the daytime because she's worried someone's going to pull her over and she will be deported. And these are the folks that I have always been in my mind and in my heart when I do this work. So I know it's not easy to to create systems that are inclusive to folks who are somewhat intentionally living in the shadows, somewhat. But we can do it through working through Summer Viva in Somerville, the Workers Center, and quite frankly, through canvassing. A lot of elected officials, almost all of them, they canvass on election time. They say, here's who I am, let's get your vote. And then you don't see them for 2 years or 4 years. We need to be going to people in these off years, not to talk to them about elections, but to talk to them about their rights, to talk to them about what resources are available, and to make sure that our community is actually connected. Because right now we have a situation where too many people feel left out, isolated, afraid of even their local government, and they don't know how many people in our community actually want to support them and work alongside them. So I'm committed to not only doing institutional work to better our systems, but actually going directly to people to let them know what options they have and who has their back.
Yes, thank you. Very strong answer. So sort of related, moving into the category of education. So this is a yes or no question. Again, you're welcome to elaborate for 2 minutes. Will you work to adapt the Somerville High School vocational program to include green job training? So for example, solar panel installation or adapting buildings and infrastructure to be more sustainable?
Yes, insofar as I can from my position as a city councilor, because as I'm sure you're aware, we have a school committee, and this year and last year have been particularly contentious within Somerville around the division of labor between city council and the school committee. And I'm, as an activist, I feel like I'm going to go in and I'm going to make a certain amount of enemies automatically because they're going to be like, I'm a landlord, or I am a multinational corporation. So don't want to start off by getting the school committee mad at me. However, I absolutely believe that we need to be doing this. We should incorporate it into the Green New Deal legislation. We need to be creating a youth council. Somerville has had a commission for young people. I do not know how active it is. I know that many people don't know how many commissions the city actually even has or how many are active. We need to reinvigorate that body so that not only are we going to the young people in our community saying, hey, here's what jobs you can have and here's what opportunities you can have, but here's what our city is doing. How is this going to affect you? What kind of information can you tell us so we can better implement our strategies? Or is this the wrong strategy? Because so many things in our community impact young people here. We are an incredibly young municipality overall, and we can actually do much better by listening directly to people, I'm going to say 18 and younger, to actually shape how our city is changing and shape the policies that we craft.
Thank you. Yes, we certainly do recognize that there is the school committee has its own responsibilities, but just wanted to ask to get a sense of your intentions. So our final question is also in the category of education. So how do you believe that public schools can prepare students for their future in a world impacted by climate change?
Ooh, this is a tough one, and it's unfortunately a somewhat emotionally devastating question. As someone who's seen the aftermath of extreme weather events on young people, on families, part of the reason your last question is so important is because we need to do everything possible in the next 10 years to make sure that the devastation that comes to this community and other communities is as limited as possible. Part of that, as you've alluded to, is making sure that young people are part of the solution, not only saying, hey, recycle this water bottle or use this cup more than 2 times, but also, hey, here's how solar panels work. Here's how people are trying to make this technology more efficient. And here's how you can help us do that and how you can install them and how you can get a good paying job, a union job, by doing so. We need to be doing so much in this community right now to weatherize it, not only from our houses, but also we essentially need to rebuild the Amelia Earhart Dam, which is Mystic, because it is at risk of breaking. And if it does, flooding will become a routine part of our life, unfortunately, in Somerville. Therefore, we need to do as much as possible to bring young people, as well as whoever else is in Somerville. It's not just young people. It's like 52% young people. But the other half, they can help too. I want to do as much as possible to make sure that young people don't have to resign themselves to the climate crisis. It can actually be an active part in solving it.
All right. Well, thank you very much for coming to speak to us. We really appreciate you taking the time. We're still going through questionnaires and meeting with candidates, but we will definitely reach out soon one way or